Hi, and welcome to Run Tall with Tim, the YouTube channel that's dedicated to all runners everywhere. I'm Tim, and I upload new running videos every week. If you're new to the channel, I post new videos on both Wednesday and Saturday mornings, and that's at 5 a.m. Standard Eastern Time here in the US. Also, sometimes I like to post bonus videos. So if you enjoy watching running shoe reviews and other videos related to running, be sure to subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell so that you'll be notified each time that I upload new content. Also, if you want to save yourself a little time, I tried to make that easy for you. If you open the description, there you're going to see where I've created chapters. Just click on the timestamp for the part of the video that you want to watch, and it's going to take you right there. On today's episode, I'm comparing two cushioned daily training running shoes, one by Brooks, the Glycerin 19 that features their DNA Loft midsole material, and the other one by New Balance, their 1080 V11 that has their Fresh Foam X midsole material. But before I get into it too far, I always like to start by demonstrating what it looks like to run in these shoes. That way you can see for yourself what it looks like when that foam strikes the ground, and you can check out the pronation in the heel and all that kind of good stuff. But then when we come back together, we're going to take a real close look at both the Glycerin 19 and the 1080 V11 to try to answer the question, which one is right for you? Now, this video is not intended to be a full review of either one of these running shoes. However, if you want to take a look at that, I put a link in the description below to reviews that I've completed for each one previously. Let's just start. We'll talk about the cost. Now, they both cost the same. They're 150 US dollars. And while that's a lot of money, it does seem to be what they're getting for highly cushioned daily training running shoes these days. The weight of the shoes, there's a little bit difference here. Now, the Brooks Glycerin 19 comes in at 10.1 ounces or 287 grams, and that's for a men's size 9 on my scales. While the New Balance 1080 V11 comes in at 9.3 ounces or 264 grams. And again, men's size 9 on my scales. So let's look at the uppers. And we'll start with the Brooks Glycerin 19. As we zoom in, we can see that it is a mesh material, and we have lots of perforations up there in the toe box. I found that toe box to be just about perfect for me in terms of width and room. I had plenty of room to splay my toes, yet I didn't feel like it was so much room that I was kind of sloshing around in that upper. Also, they have 3D print overlays, and they place those in strategic areas that help to stiffen up that material so that when you go to cinch up your laces, you can get a nice secure fit across your midfoot. So as we pan around to the side of the shoe, we can see those 3D print overlays. We can also see their Brooks logo there. And as we move our way around to the heel counter, you can see that they have a pretty good piece of plastic that's kind of triangular shaped that gives it some structure back in the heel counter. So now let's flip over and we'll take a look at the New Balance 1080 V11 and that upper. You can see that it's a synthetic mesh material that feels like a knit to me. Now this is a little bit different. There's a lot of stretch up in that toe box. So it's going to be form-fitting for a lot of different foot sizes and shapes. So I think it's going to be pretty accommodating that way. But the trade-off is I had to work a little bit harder to get that same lockdown feeling in the 1080 V11s. It just seemed like I had to really cinch up the laces, so I had to put in a little bit more effort than I did with the Brooks Glycerin 19. I was able to get there. I just wish that I hadn't had to cinch up the laces quite so much to achieve that same lockdown feeling. And now as we continue to pan around to the side of the shoe, we can see that they have their New Balance logo here as a plastic overlay. But when we get back to the heel counter, that's a different material altogether. And they call it their Ultra Heel Design or Ultra Heel Design. And that's more of a kind of a neoprene type of a feeling to that material. And we're going to talk about more of that here in just a minute. So let's flip around and we'll take a look at the lace enclosure systems on both of these. And you can see that they're pretty basic. There's really not any kind of big wow factor here as we look at both of these. With the Glycerin 19, you can see it's really a very standard lacing system. They have got that extra material around the eyelets, both on the inside of the cage as well as on the outside to give it some extra durability so you don't have to worry about your laces pulling through. With the New Balance, again, pretty basic except for there is one exception. It's a little bit different. This has a bit of a bootie style construction with a gusseted tongue. And because of that, when you start your laces up in that lace enclosure, you're actually going up under and going up the lace enclosure system first before crossing over. So the bootie kind of construction goes up to about the third lace, and then that's really where the tongue starts. And, again, that has a lot of stretch to it. And so I did struggle at times trying to get a lockdown feeling across that midfoot. So, again, the Brooks 19, I think, or the Brooks Glycerin 19, I felt like I could get locked in just a little bit better across that midfoot section of the shoe. So now let's look at the tongues of both of these shoes. As I mentioned, with the Brooks 19, that's a gusseted tongue. It's pretty well padded, very comfortable. I didn't have any issues with it at all. On the New Balance 1080 V11, that's about, I would say, a quarter bootie construction with 3/4 of a tongue, but the 3/4 is gusseted. So again, I didn't really have any issues with it moving around. It's not as padded as the Brooks Glycerin 19. So if you're looking for straight up comfort across that lace enclosure system with the tongue, the Brooks Glycerin 19 is going to give you more comfort. So now let's take a look at the heel collar and tab of these shoes. Big difference here. The Glycerin 19 has lots of padding around that heel collar and around the tab of the shoe. I would say, it's more than ample to keep you nice and comfortable when you're out running. I really enjoyed that feeling. So if you like a lot of comfort around your ankle area, the Brooks Glycerin 19 certainly gives that to you. Now with the 1080 V11, I didn't run in the 1080 V10s, but I do have the 1080 V9s. And one of the issues that I had was on the heel counter kind of digging in. Well, they replaced that with this Ultra Heel system, and we got this nice Achilles heel flare here. So I no longer have that issue where it's digging into the back of my heel. So that felt really good on my Achilles. And you can use this as a pull tab, too, to help you try to get your shoes on. So that's kind of a nice feature as well. The one thing that I found that I didn't like that well is there isn't any padding around in the heel collar, as you could see. And as a result, if you're wearing, for example, if you're living in hotter weather and you have no-show socks on, this kind of rubs up around my ankle anyway. I put both of these shoes on, one on each foot, so I could get a good sense of the comfort to describe to you guys here today. And I didn't have socks on when I did it. And I could feel that kind of rubbing my ankle area, that ankle bone and so on, I would not want to run in these without having maybe a crew sock on. Now, for me, this time of year, as you can see in that run sequence, it's cold. So I got some pretty thick socks on. So the comfort was fine. It felt really good that way. But I just know that if I didn't have a taller sock on, that there could be problems. So just know that going into it, that you're probably going to have to wear, maybe a taller sock or maybe even a crew sock, as I mentioned. So let's turn our attention now to the heel counter on both of these shoes. And there's a big difference here. The Brooks Glycerin 19 has a lot more structure in the heel. And as I mentioned earlier, they got these big plastic heel clips here. And as I go to try to pinch that, I can't. I really can't pinch that together at all. That is solid. And I can't really push it going forward either. I mean, I am really trying, and it is super solid. So for me, as a runner who overpronates, I love that because it has a lot of motion control for me. So I don't have to worry about getting a lot of ankle roll where I could potentially injure myself or re-injure myself, as the case might be. So lots of structure in the heel counter there. Now, there is structure in the heel counter of the 1080 V11. I enjoy running the shoe. It's lighter. It's a little bit more nimble, but not nearly as much. So, if you're a neutral shoe runner, and these are both neutral road shoes that run true to size for me, you're not going to have any issues there. I think there's plenty for a neutral shoe runner. And same going forward. Not nearly as much, as the Brooks Glycerin 19, because as you saw, I couldn't even budge that. But here, there is plenty of structure for a neutral runner. I don't think you're going to have any issues for most of you that, have that type of a running style. So let's take a look at the midsole on these shoes, because there's a big difference. The midsoles are basically the engine of the shoe. It's how soft they are, how responsive they are, and we got DNA Loft versus that Fresh Foam X. And with the DNA Loft material, it's not as cushioned or soft as the Fresh Foam X is, at least in my opinion. Now, in this shoe, they have pretty good stack height. They have 31 millimeters in the heel and 21 millimeters in the forefoot for a 10 millimeter offset from the heel to the toe. It is soft. It's just not as soft as the Fresh Foam X is. And New Balance also has, a good deal of material underfoot here as well. They have a 30 millimeter stack height in the heel and 22 millimeters in the forefoot. So they have an 8 millimeter offset from the heel to the toe. Both had, a fair amount of responsiveness. I felt pretty smooth in my gait cycle in both shoes, so they're pretty comparable that way. Both I felt were super comfortable, and you could put a lot of miles on them very comfortably. So as a long distance daily trainer, and I think that's where really both of these shoes fit, I don't know that you could go wrong with either shoe. The difference will be, if you like a little bit more of an offset, and it is noticeable. Again, I put one on each foot, and you can definitely tell the difference. You're in the Brooks, you got a little bit more of that angle facing forward than you do in the New Balance 1080 V11. So it just depends on what you like to feel underfoot. Now, I have been recovering from an injury that I sustained way back in mid-July. Was in physical therapy all the way up through about mid-October. So, in reality, I'm still building back my volume a little at a time. And so having a taller stack height or bigger offset sometimes is an advantage to me. It just kind of reduces that pressure that I have on my ankles and all that kind of good stuff. So there is plenty of times when I'm going to be reaching for the Brooks Glycerin 19 just because of that factor and the fact that there's more stability in the heel counter for me. So it just makes me feel a little more comfortable when I'm out running that I'm not going to potentially re-injure myself as a result of the shoes that I'm wearing. Now, I've enjoyed running in the 1080 V11s. They're really comfortable. They're more nimble underfoot, and I'm sure that has a lot to do with the fact that they're almost an ounce lighter in weight. And I feel like they have a little bit more flexibility in the toe than the Brooks Glycerin 19 does. Not that that isn't flexible, it just feels a little bit stiffer to me. So let's flip these over and we'll take a look at the outsoles before we wrap this up, just to kind of compare the two there. And you can see with the Brooks Glycerin 19, they've got tons of blown rubber here to give you lots of durability, but this is pretty traditional. It also gives you a little bit of traction when you're out running, so I did like that. And they have in that midfoot section that exposed DNA Loft material that they call a transition zone. That's simply to help you move a little bit more smoothly through your gait cycle. So let's flip over the 1080V11s and we'll take a look at those. And they have lots of blown rubber here as well, but it's a little bit different in style. You can see that it's almost pod-like in terms of their outsole material or design to it, and that adds a little bit of cushion. So it's not that blown rubber doesn't feel like it's quite as hard as that's on the Brooks Glycerin 19, and it feels like it's a little bit thicker. So it's going to add a little bit of cushion as well as a little bit of responsiveness to your gait cycle as well. So as you move through your gait, strike the ground and roll through from your heel or your midfoot through to your toe off, I think it's just going to be a little bit softer. And they have lots of flex grooves there to make it feel very natural, much like the flex grooves that are in the Brooks Glycerin 19. So for me, on days when I need a little extra structure and I feel like my body needs a little bit of a break from the potential of getting some type of an injury from ankle roll and that type of thing, I'm going to be reaching for the Brooks Glycerin 19, even though it's a little bit heavier. But on days when I'm going to be putting in a fair amount of miles and maybe I want to pick up the pace toward the end, make it into a progression run, the 1080V11 is more nimble, and I think it's more appropriate or a better fit if you want to pick up the pace in your run at any point in time. So, hey, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I certainly enjoyed making it for you. As always, run tall, run strong, be kind to one another. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.